Got my tires. Just waiting on wheels. Still have to figure out what's going on with my spindles. Got a few issues with that. Gonna be a really wide monster. So I'm running 315 25 22s on the front and a hefty 33 1450 26 in the rear. I know not everybody likes that look. That's okay, because I do. Got to start working on the bed, fixing to lay out bottom rails, and I'll be videoing how that goes together. Gonna be a cool little pickup. I also finished up the trim around the edges of the massive mailbox. Plan on doing some really crazy exhaust. This should come straight out and turn into either 4 or 6 inch diesel tips, one for every cylinder. Essentially going for a really wild Hot Wheels look. Yes, it's going to be ridiculous to drive, but that's okay. frame was built. Just need to make some tabs to mount to the frame in a couple spots. See, I had to go around the axle, and for the axle travel up and down whenever the air is put into the bags in the rear. So it's using that radius right here for the corners, and then I'll sheet metal all this in. And I'll have to put some vents in the back because the radiator's going in the back. Radiator and condenser right here. I'll have to make brackets and everything for all that. But little short pickup bed. I'll make a lift up tonneau cover out of metal also, and hinge it in the rear. Alright, about to grind all the sides down. What I did was I measured and laid out the distances for the sides and the back, and I guess the tonneau cover, if you want to call it that. And I put all this in CAD, and I drew it up. So this would be the back. Radiator's going in the back, so I have to vent the back. And I had these old leftover vents that I'm going to use. I have a bunch of them, so I'm just going to take these and they're essentially going to go in like this, and of course they'll be painted and everything else, but because this is on a curve, I made a relief cut because this portion is going to have to stay straight, and then the remaining portion around the perimeter will have to go around the curve, which is basically this curve. So what that allows me to do is kick this back, keep it straight, and then I'll fill in around the inside perimeter to make sure that this portion stays straight. So it'll basically be like a small inset of some sort. And then these other pieces, this is basically the tonneau cover, which I'm going to have to make a frame for. I've got two fresh air vents in the top, same kind of vents, and then I've got a little latch that I'm going to place right here that I measured out, and it's pretty cool. You'll see when I get to that point. And then these pieces, that's the cutout for the axle, and then I just basically made these just a little bit long both ways, I'm gonna have to shape this end and this end to go with the contour of the bed on both sides. I'll probably have to do that first, and then I'll do the tailgate, which is really not a tailgate, but that will have to go on last. So I'll have 3 sides, both sheet metal 16 gauge on both sides for the, right by the wheels, and then the actual tailgate portion, which is nothing more than essentially a vent for the radiator to dissipate heat right out the back. So, all right. So I'm about to grind down these welds and make it flat. After that, I'll start tacking in the sides, tacking in the rear, get all that figured out. So here we go. So this is the back, right? Okay. And I kept these pieces on purpose, just in case I wanted to do this, and I decided to go ahead and do it because it would look better. But I want this back radius to continue all the way to the bottom. So that means what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hack this corner out, and then cut a piece of this, weld it in, and that way I've got my radius on the corners, and it's it'll be flat back here. I may have to notch a little bit just to get the sheet metal to be correct, but then when I do the sides will come right up and stop on this edge like it's supposed to, and still have a nice wrap around this bottom. It's very minor, but I just don't want it sticking out like a sore thumb. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hack that out and make that work. Okay, got the corner in there. I just wanted this radius to continue, that's it. It's kind of tedious, but if you want it to look right, I guess you go that far. And so I'll run my sheet metal all the way down to here. I'll tack all that in, and then maybe I probably will fill this little corner in, depending on how that turns out, but we'll see how it works. Basically just holding this back just enough where I can tack it. I'll tack down this side because I'm going to have a piece that goes right here anyway, which will be that that 3.5 piece round muffler pipe. And so I'm about to hack this off. Got this cut out for the axle. I'll tack it on the inside, and then I'll be tacking this edge, and that'll get my sides. Alright, got this far. What I think I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna cut this from here to this point, and then from there to the same point, and that way I can graft from this flat, I can graft it to nothing on both sides, and that way whenever that's body worked, it'll be seamless, and I'll just go far enough that it gives me a nice point, like right over here somewhere. Meanwhile, I've got a bow right here that's dipping down because this is on a curve. These have to be flat, so I'm gonna take a piece of 3/4 by 3/4 and go from the inside brace to inside brace on both sides, and that'll take the bow out right here, and then I'll tack it in on the back side, obviously. And then the rest of this, because this had to be flat, that's why I did a relief cut. And so I'm gonna take a piece of angle. The angle will get the bow out of this, and then I'll tack it at the top all the way across here and here, and that'll get it right where it needs to be. I'll bolt these in, that way they're keeping the whole surface flat, and then the only thing I have to do after that is to fill in the little bit of edge that I have, which is gonna be right here. And I'll just take a piece of flat bar, slip it inside, and then tack it all in, and that way I've got the shape of the back, so it'll have that shape, but I'll still have this flat area for the grills to dissipate that heat out of the back whenever I get the radiator in and everything is running appropriately. So anyway, more work. Okay, pretty close. It's all tacked in. Grates are bolted in. Spot for the axle. All I have to finish is this inside piece, which is going to be probably a pain in the butt, but I've got all that tacked in on the underside with using a piece of angle iron. It'll be a cool looking bed. Rounded corners and curves to match the back body line, or the back curvature of the car. All right, next is tonneau cover. No, I'm not going to do that. This will go on the sides. Like so. And on the cab side, I'm going to go with the little dome rounded corner or rounded end. I'm going to weld it on, but I ran out of gas, which sucks because I'd like to keep going, but can't. And the caddy tail lights. Alright, I got it kind of mocked up. I got it just taped in there. I know a lot of people use the caddy tail lights, and I'm not usually one to use something that everybody else is using. However, those caddy tail lights are just so freaking cool that I just gotta use them. And I've wanted to do this weird situation right here on a pickup bed anyway, to where they're hanging out the end and baloney cut. So, and I've got of course everything's taped, but I'm mocked up. Got it sitting on some 2x4s. But that way the piece that's coming up by the cab is finished off. It really gives it a better, kind of takes away from the boxy look of the bed, even though it has the curves on the back and against the cab. But I think it's gonna look cool.